Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, to Lead for Good, a show for all nonprofit leaders of all titles and experience levels. My name is Chris Looney. I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Our show endeavors to cover the most important nonprofit leadership topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. Today, we welcome Matt VandenBerg, a dynamic leader in higher education and a visionary change maker who is currently serving as the 17th president of Ohio Wesleyan University. With a reputation for bold innovation, mission-driven leadership, and deep commitment to the liberal arts, President VandenBerg is guiding OWU into a new era of relevance, impact, and opportunity. From championing student success to fostering strategic partnerships, he's really refining what it means to lead a modern university with heart, courage, and ambition. So welcome to the show, Matt. It's great to have you.
Great to be with you, my friend. Thanks for having me.
You bet, you bet. So let's start the conversation we're going to have today with your leadership origin story. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today?
Absolutely. I'm trying to think where to start that, but I think the best place to start might be in my undergraduate days. So I went to college dead set on two things. I was absolutely certain of two things. One was that I was going to become a chemistry major. I was going to graduate with a chemistry degree. And two was that I was going to graduate, go to medical school and become a surgeon somewhere. As I like to say,
Perfect.
yeah, right. I didn't do very well on any of those measures. As I like to say, I'm a doctor, but not the kind that can help anybody these days.
Right.
So, it was a very hard realization when I learned that being a doctor was not going to be for me. So I did organic chemistry lab, and you had to fit those 3D models
Mhm.
together in organic chemistry. I just don't have the spatial reasoning to do that. And all these years later, I'm not even allowed to put IKEA furniture together for the same reason. So it all makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But it did mean that organic chemistry was not going to be a passable subject for me. And the other thing was fetal pig dissection lab. I learned that I did not have the stomach to rip apart anything dead or alive.
Yeah.
So you probably shouldn't be a doctor if those two realities are yours. So
Right.
it was a really tough kind of realization. And I was at a small private liberal arts institution, a lot like Ohio Wesleyan, called Alma College in Michigan. And I had a faculty member, sort of put her arm around me and help dust me off and say, hey, I think there's another way for you to be of service to society. And so I kept going, I kept trying new things. And I actually found my traction in student government. So I ran for class president and I won. And I got really interested in and involved with operating the institution. And we had a new president join us my senior year. By the time I had reached my senior year, I became president of the student body. And so I had a
Okay.
standing meeting with the new president, and she started to realize that I had a lot of interest in college life and running an institution. And she was the first person to ever say, hey, I think you could actually be a college president.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she said, Yeah, really, really encouraging and generous on her part. And the other thing that she said, which was really interesting as I reflect all these years later, is, it was like 2000. So she said, I think that in 20, 25 years, the only thing higher education is going to be thinking about is money. So it makes sense to me that you might not do the traditional professor, dean, provost
Right,
kind of
right.
route, and you might think about something like fundraising or enrollment management. And so that
Hmm.
always struck me, even then, as sort of like that's going to be a prescient comment. I bet you that's right. And sure enough, it was.
Very.
So unlike a lot of college presidents who kind of describe their path as falling into their position, I graduated at the age of 22, knowing exactly what I wanted to do for a living. And I have been on a beeline to get to this role for the entirety of my career.
Gosh,
We
I had
don't
no
talk about
idea.
that path, but that was kind of my formative crucible story.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you did follow that advice and go into fundraising directly after graduating?
I ended up getting into higher education. It was 2002, and I think I tried to get an advancement job, but for some reason didn't get traction. So I ended up working with international students at a small private liberal arts institution in New Jersey.
Okay.
But I quickly got into advancement work a little bit later in my career.
Got it. Got it. And I know you spent time as a consultant in fundraising, working on major fundraising initiatives, capital campaigns, and those kinds of things. When you jumped out of that role, was it back into higher ed?
So, yes, it was. To back up a little bit, I knew that I was going to need a master's degree and a doctorate, and so that was
Oh,
always
got
kind
it.
of,
Of
kind of part of
course.
the plan.
Of
So
course.
after I
That
took this, and
which is so different than a lot of nonprofit leaders who don't have that sort of obligation of getting they want to and many have them, but right, it's not prescriptive for a CEO of a nonprofit to be a PhD.
that's right, that's right. It's there are people in higher education that kind of refer to this as having the plumber's license. It's just one of the things that
Right.
you need to do.
Got it.
So I ended up after I was at this institution in New Jersey, I went and got my master's degree from Indiana University. And I actually thought that I was going to go right into advancement, into fundraising work after that. But I got this incredible job opportunity at the age of 25 to be the foreign policy, national defense advisor to a member of Congress who was also the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. So my
Wow.
job was to be the conduit between his personal office, doing all the foreign policy, immigration, national defense stuff, all the stuff that touches intelligence, and I was his conduit to the Intelligence Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, and I did that at 25 years old. I was
So cool.
really excited to be able to do that. It was one of the most fun jobs I've had. I went through a 2006 election that was really tough, and I realized I wanted to be nice for a living. I didn't want to be nasty for a living, and so I did get back into advancement with this consulting firm, and from there I got into higher education and have had 4 or 5 roles now in a row in advancement in higher education.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And here you are as the president. That beeline, you've arrived, though you're too young to claim that you've hit the ceiling yet or reached the top. So I can't wait to see what's ahead. But at the same time, I'd love to know what your favorite role has been of all of these different responsibilities and roles that you have. I had no idea that you were working in policy. I had no idea, that you had worked in other meaningful jobs in higher ed. What was the favorite for you?
it really would be tough for me to pick out one. I think I like every job for different reasons, and they all made me who I am. And
Perfect.
I really learned a lot along the way. I think about how excited I am to be in this role, so it's an easy, no-brainer answer for me to say, this is my favorite role
Right.
that I've ever had. And I suspect I will say that, 10, 15, 20 years from now as well. But I also really appreciated my time as VP for advancement at my alma mater, Alma College. So the same place where I learned where I wanted to be, I got to come back and help run a major campaign for that institution. It's also my father's alma mater, and my
Oh,
cousin was chair of the biology department and was, when I was a pre-med major, my cousin was the chair of the biology department.
no
So
wonder you wanted to become a doctor.
yeah, she helped me realize that wouldn't have been a good
Yeah,
idea.
good, good, good. Hey, we all need mentors, right?
But my time on Capitol Hill was probably the most unique thing that I did to be able to have that opportunity at 25. And it was a really interesting time to be there. We were doing post September 11th things. So we were working on the Patriot Act. We were, thinking a lot about the growing role of China. I found myself in odd situations with famous people really randomly, just being in
Yeah, of
Washington, D.C.
course.
Do we have time for a quick story?
Yeah, I would love one. Thank you.
So I had to run an errand. I was in the House office buildings, and there's a train that runs from the House office buildings to the Capitol Rotunda, and then one that runs from the Capitol Rotunda to the Senate office buildings. I need to be in the Senate, and it's like 1,000 degrees outside in the summer. So I get on the train to go to the Capitol Rotunda, then hop off and get on the next train. And nobody else was on this train except for one other person who looked vaguely familiar to me. And this whole train is empty except for this one guy, and he sits right next to me. And I realize he's got a reporter following him who ends up getting on. So here we are, this long train, and there are three of us in one car. And this guy is clearly doing the interview, and I'm like, I really recognize this guy, but I can't put my finger on it. And so we get all the way to the other side. We hop off, and then the same thing happens on the Senate side. He gets on in the same car, and then I end up opening the door for him and the person interviewing him, and he kind of pats me on the side in the shoulder and says, "Thanks, sport." And I remember that interaction, but then it dawned on me maybe a few hours after that interaction. I think it was 2004. This was the junior senator from Illinois that had just given the national address for the Democratic National Convention. It was Barack Obama.
Right, right. And he called you sport.
He called me sport. So I thought, even then, if this guy makes it, I'm going to have a heck of a good story here. But my time in DC was filled with so many kind of neat interactions like that. But I just had the opportunity to be able to develop a different skill set that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten had I just been purely advancement for my whole career.
Yeah. No, makes you very nimble and knowledgeable, and the diversity of experience is really great. I bet if you came across Barack Obama again, he might actually recognize you the all these years later and say, "Hey, sport, I remember that time in the train." I've just understood some of these leaders like Barack Obama and others to have this incomparable capability to recognize faces. And I bet he's one of those. But great, such a great story, such a great story. And I'm glad you had that experience. I'm here on the West Coast, and we have similar run-ins with famous people. Most of
Mm.
them are the actor types, I guess, rather than public servants. But it's always fun when you can have those moments, especially as a 25-year-old who aspires to do great things in the world. Um, I always ask the question about mentors, and because I think they're incredibly important, and you already, without even prompting, pointed out the college president while you were a student that perhaps gave you some of the most important guidance, encouragement, or advice that you could have possibly received in a lifetime. So that might be one. But who are some of the mentors to you in your life?
What's going to be funny is that I will show my lack of creativity here because I'm going to stay at the same institution. So yes, the president of Alma College when I was a student was a formative mentor for me. But then the president of Alma College when I was vice president for advancement was a formative leader for me as well. His name is Jeff Abernathy, and he gave me a shot to be his VP for advancement when I was at a early age to sort of do that role. And not only was he just terrific to work with on advancement related work, he also gave me opportunities to lead cross functional institution wide projects. And he actually proactively encouraged me to do things like get the plumber's license, get the doctorate.
Yeah.
And so he actually became a partner in looking at opportunities and helping me to get those opportunities, including participating in the Council of Independent College has this executive leadership academy, which is sort of like a presidential finishing school, if you will. And so I
Yeah.
got a chance to participate in that year-long program.
Hmm.
Very few, I've learned not to take for granted that there just are very few leaders who have the mindset that as leaders of educational institutions, we are here to promote the development and to nurture the growth of everyone, not just our students. And so I
Right.
always appreciated that he never operated from a scarcity mindset. He wasn't afraid I was going to leave. He was just excited to help me grow and to see me grow. And I think that's really been informative to me because now anyone on my leadership team, anyone in my sort of sphere of influence, I've sort of begun to really think that people will leave if they stop learning. So they'll actually be more likely to leave if you don't do those things for
Ah,
them.
right.
So one of those many examples where just doing the right thing actually leads to a better result. And that's something that I really learned from Jeff Abernathy and the way he approached my professional development.
Yeah, doing the right thing often leads to a better result. Not often something you hear, but something that should be constantly shared with younger, emerging executives or anyone, right? It's so important, especially in the nonprofit world, to continue to focus on doing the right thing, doing good things, because in the end, it'll produce a better result. So, um,
Absolutely.
so great, so great. Well, it was Jeff. Is that the name of the mentor, Jeff? I'm sure
Yes.
he would be so grateful to hear the wonderful things you just said about him. I hope when I look back at a career, there will be those people that kind of said those things about me in the opportunities I had to develop talent and bring people forward, encourage them to do great things. And I know you're in a very unique position to be able to influence a lot of people, not just students, though there's a lot of them, but staff and the community as well. I mean, you have, however large you define that. I mean, you are in a role where you speak to a local community where your university sits, but also to the diaspora, I guess, of alums and others that want to learn from you and grow and be a part of your family. So it's really an amazing opportunity. And as you think about that responsibility, that opportunity, you don't have to, you get to kind of thing. Um, what what kind of personal nonprofit leadership philosophy do you have? And I know we might dip into that when we focus on those three areas that we're going to touch on today around nonprofit leadership. But what does leadership philosophy for you look like?
It really has to begin with humility around all those things you just pointed out.
Okay.
So we have 550 faculty and staff members. We've
Mm.
got
Wow.
1,500 students. We have 40,000 alumni. Uh, we have 45,000, 50,000 people in the city of Delaware, Ohio. And a lot of times it feels like, these positions are right in the center of all of those populations. And
Right.
knowing how important the success of the institution is at the center of all these populations, when you remember that, you really realize, hey, you can't screw this up. You have to do this the right way. And you have to take this seriously because there are a lot of people depending on you. So if you can't tell, I try to really reflect on and lead with values like clarity, like consistency, like action, because people don't follow ambiguity, because consistency builds trust, and because most people know that rhetoric alone changes nothing. It's action that actually produces change. I like to model what I expect to see in others because I don't like asking other people to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do. I
Perfect.
think culture starts with the leader. And so I reflect a great deal on how I'm modeling things, other values that I care about. So the value of hard work, the value of expecting great things from ourselves, having high expectations for our output and our results, being honest about what's working and what's not working, and being accountable when you have a role in something that maybe isn't working as well as it should. Authenticity is something that we think about a lot with the population that we work the most with, Gen Z and Alpha. Authenticity is one of the most important virtues to those generations. And so, and I think it's also important whenever you're running an organization that you not only are yourself, and that you don't have any facades, but that you also create a culture where other people are free to be themselves and celebrated for being whoever it is that they are. They don't have to show up to work as somebody different because we all play our best game when we're ourselves. And then I think grace is another extremely important thing that maybe doesn't get enough airtime in leadership circles. We
No,
all make mistakes. You think so too?
100%. I mean, I think we're all just so now scared by the cancel culture, which hits a lot of different areas of leadership and work. It's not just monolithic in terms of being canceled. There's a lot of fear. And so to hear from leaders that there should be grace is just such a welcome, um, well received concept to me because we all make mistakes. None of us is perfect, and how are we supposed to learn if we can't have the runway or the capacity to fail every once in a while?
You said it perfectly there. I mean, we do all make mistakes. We all say things that we don't mean. We all have low points. And educational institutions certainly fit into this category, but I really think nonprofit organizations writ large also fit into the category of being in the business of improving lives. And that needs to start with our own teams. If we're not caring for each other, how can our teams actually care for the rest of the world? So those are important things. Just other things that I think about in terms of leadership are I I think a lot about not playing to avoid losing, but playing to win. Being maybe even more on offense than on defense, to stay focused on mission, not on maintenance. I don't
Hmm.
think that any of us are here to preserve what we have. We're here to advance a cause. And so if we're simply protecting the things that we have, um, we're forgetting that our real calling is to leverage what we have so that all can have more.
Leverage what we have so all can have more. Oh, I feel like just within the last 6 minutes where we started this question about leadership philosophy, you took us through this accelerated advanced degree in leadership. So I hope people will just maybe even cut out the last 6 minutes and memorize what they've heard from you because it's just so valuable to helping people understand what it means to lead. So thank you.
Kind of you to say. Thanks,
And you
Chris.
probably are only halfway through your leadership philosophy elements. I didn't mean to cut you off if that was the case.
You certainly didn't. I think maybe just a couple of other loosely formed ideas. All that to say, I think we have to keep moving in what we do. Stagnation is far more dangerous than risk. And to me, we face this all the time in higher education institutions that think that incremental change is going to be what gets them to the promised land. To me, the greatest danger for nonprofits is letting fear preclude progress. It's letting the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. Real strategy is a calculated bet. It's a risk about where you're going to play and how you're going to win. So if you're not a little bit unnerved by what the future holds based on your plan of work, that means you don't have a strategy. You're guided by platitudes. That means you're just focused on the easy things that everybody else is focused on. And so we think a lot at Ohio Wesleyan about the role of strategy in everything that we do. And we like to say that we lead with boldness, kindness, and innovation, because that's what transformative progress requires. And especially if you dive down into our particular industry, higher education, that's what this moment in higher education calls for. There's so many institutions that are on the ropes, that are kind of doing things the same old way, that are using the
Yeah.
same trite cliches. We have to be different and bold and swing for the parking lot, or else it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Why the parking lot as opposed for the fences?
Because it's even further.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. I knew I'm a recovering baseball player and fan. So
You were
the analogy was not lost on me.
the yeah, what do they call it when you're good at five things in baseball?
Five-tool baseball player. Yeah.
Didn't you have a construct around a five tool fundraiser?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's probably not dissimilar to what would be required of a five-tool university president. The concept being you got to be a great solicitor fundraiser. Right? You got to be able to manage up, which in the case of a fundraiser would be managing you well, which probably is pretty easy. But then the idea of managing down, and that sounds offensive these days, but managing a staff, a team, also managing volunteers, no easy task.
Yeah,
And then the concept of being strategic, not focusing on what is immediately in front of your face, but the things that you need to do 3 months, 3 years from now as an organization and as an individual as well. So I'm sure. And so that the five-tool baseball player philosophy has crept into my professional life. Yes.
it's a great construct for fundraising, and you're right, it has a ton of implications beyond.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And I've always had to hold myself back from using too many baseball metaphors because I have to remind myself that not everybody
Yeah,
knows where second base is. So anyway, it's all good. But thank you for um, bringing that analogy to me because I love hitting cars over the fence in the parking lot. It's never the player's fault, which is great. It's always the person's fault for parking there. So
that's right.
always swing for the parking lot. Well, let's transition because I don't want to lose the opportunity to talk about these three particular elements of nonprofit leadership, which is what we do in these podcast conversations. We focus on themes, and the themes that we wanted to focus on with you include creating a shared vision, elevating sites, and building momentum. And I think the only challenge we will have is getting through it without it taking hours and hours, because I know you have so much to say. And the audience might actually want that, but we'll try to do it more briefly, just so that we can want people to want more. But let's jump in. So let's start with creating a shared vision. And I guess the way I should probably start is what does that mean to you, and why is it important, and how do you accomplish it? So
Yeah, you know, to me, I start with the understanding that nobody rows hard for a boat they don't believe in.
hmm
Uh, and you really have to have shared ownership for the future if you're going to be successful. And to
hmm
continue the rowing analogy, if everyone's rowing in different directions, you're not going to make any progress in any direction, or it's going to at best case, it's just going to be unpredictable. If you really want to build a catalytic culture, one where ideas kind of build on each other and where synergies thrive and where real creativity thrives, the only way to do that is by achieving a shared vision. And so, the question becomes, you know, how do you sort of get to that? And I think it's fairly well understood that it begins with, if you're a leader, being a student of the culture of the organization. You have to taste the soup before you salt it, to kind of use the old the old analogy. And here's a nugget. There are so many books on how to have a successful first 60, 90, 120 days. Let me save you the time. I'm going to give you the lit review right here, because they all basically make the same point with, nuance with shades of gray.
hmm
It's not enough to simply be a student of a culture. You have to be seen and understood and experienced by the community as being a student of the culture. So in other words, you can't do this work quietly. You have to do it earnestly and then make a production out of it so that other people see that you are actually putting in the work that is required to develop the capital and the validity and the permission. You've achieved the permission to be able to lead. I just don't think that you're going to be valid or effective as a leader if you're not understood as starting with, let me start with you.
Let me start with you. Yeah.
And it's become like axiomatic in college presidential circles that you're going to start with a listening tour, right? We've
Right.
all heard about the listening tour. Um, I, I, I sort of felt like it was important to do that differently so that it wouldn't just go in the collective, right ear and go out the left ear,
Good.
without settling in. And so we didn't just do a listening tour; we actually did a shadowing tour. So I rolled up my sleeves and I got in it with, you know, faculty and staff and students. I worked out with or practiced on the field with all of our sports teams. I did experiments in the chemistry lab. I crawled on my hands and knees with our facility staff in the bowels of, the ugliest building we have on campus.
Awesome.
And so it's a much more effective way to actually learn. We all know that hands-on learning is going to be
More fun too.
more fun. People can actually teach you what you need to know in their home environment, which
Yeah.
means they're going to be more effective and more
Well, you didn't
comfortable
have everyone
teachers.
come to you so you could sit behind a big desk with a big chair and ask them to be brought in, because it's their meeting time. Yeah, such old kind of rules.
I've probably spent a total of 10 hours in that office in my first 2 years here
That's great.
for
We need
that
to hear
reason.
that. That we need to hear that. What value is there for you to be in your office if you can be more valuable with your team, with your people, right? Or whatever.
I used to have a sign in my office that said there's no money in here for similar reasons when I was a fundraiser, just to remind me that like I've already looked through the drawers. There's no $1 million check sitting here. I need to
Person
be at my
that used to have this job didn't leave any money in the drawer.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So we were talking about kind of this hands-on learning and being understood as being a student of the culture. The other aspect of that is social media. So I made a big production out of broadening the teaching of Matt, the new president. I made a big production out of not just having that be through our current students, faculty, and staff. So what I would do is most days I would document whatever it was that I was doing online, but then I would ask a strategic, open-ended question to help continue the learning. So I'd be with a sports team and take the photo with the team or, do something silly. And then I'd say something about what I learned. And then I would ask a question like, what are some of the emerging opportunities for us in athletics or, something like that.
Good. Yeah.
And then the learning for me would continue, but other people got to actually participate in the teaching of Matt. And so then even our alumni and our members of, the city of Delaware, Ohio, they were all witnessing me being a student of the culture. So it wasn't just me doing that quietly, it was me being understood broadly as being a student of the culture. Um, I also think that this is back on shared vision, so I have to climb back up to the top subject there.
Yeah. No, it's great.
A shared vision also requires a valid process to ideate, to exchange ideas, and to allow everyone to be able to get involved, to allow for full participation. And so, again, it's not just that you've done those things, it's that the process itself needs to be seen as valid in the eyes of the people who need to give input, who are actually doing the work. So did everyone have a chance to inform that vision? Is it top down, or did it actually come from them? And do they
Mhm.
embrace the process itself? And I think a shared vision, the product needs to be galvanizing. I don't think, and this is really at the heart of the initial question, which is what is a shared vision? I don't think a shared vision means that everyone has to love every element of the vision, that it has to be 10 out of 10 aces for every single person across the board. To me, what's more important as a question is this: can every person in the community, whether internal or external, can they can they see in that vision the work that they are doing and will do in the future? Is it authentic to them and how they add value to the institution? Is it authentic to the institution itself? Does it create societal value and institutional value? And does it open the door not just for the success of the mission of the institution, but for society writ large? To me, you've got a truly galvanizing shared vision when the answer to those questions is yes.
I like it. Yeah. That's amazing. And have you seen that a shared vision does galvanize, that it does move the institution forward more efficiently, effectively? So in your mind, I guess, what are some of the, rationales for being so focused on a shared vision?
I think if you were just seen or understood as operating in a silo, trying to get your leadership agenda accomplished, I just don't think people are going to readily jump on board and say, "Yep, sign me up for that." I mean, you might be able to, but if you've got everyone sort of rowing in the same direction,
Yeah.
it'll be catalytic, but then other people will start to really see how they can sort of work proactively, not just reactively to whatever you're telling them, but proactively, and they can help you think of things that you didn't, think were possible. All of a sudden, you've got innovation that is unlocked because people kind of have the safety and the clarity of knowing that they are operating
Good one.
in the same direction as you. And when you've got people, when you're unlocking, when you're uh, detangling the harness, when you're unhooking the harness and letting people do what they do best,
Mm,
that's where you really start to see magic in an organization. And so
yeah.
that's the way we are thinking about that at Ohio
That's
Wesleyan.
great. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Um, so what I think this kind of leads into is this way of raising sites, elevating sites, right?
Yeah,
You're hoping, I'm sure, that creating a shared vision allows people to do some site raising to avoid the stagnation. I'd be interested to kind of understand from you how you approach this idea of raising people's sights.
absolutely. And you're right. I think these two questions, these two topics that we've just taken up are, almost two sides of the same coin
Yeah,
to
right.
some degree. I'll wax poetic a little bit on this. I think a vision of a better tomorrow is a galvanizing concept. It's etched into our understanding of the American dream. It's part of the sort of national ethos. It's tough to rally others behind a call to action that says, stay alive, keep afloat. I think it's even tougher to rally others around a message that just says, let's keep doing what we're going to do. Let's keep the train on the tracks. In my experience, what really motivates others, whether it's donors or volunteers or the public or customers, it's when you can tell a powerful story about your organization making a better world and the role that they can play in driving a better outcome for the world by partnering with your organization. So you're
Good.
right, you're telling them a story, but you're positioning them as the hero in that story.
There, yeah. Positioning them as the hero in that story with the outcome being a better world, a better whatever, not just a better organization, right?
Uh, exactly. And you said something really important there that has become a mantra at Ohio Wesleyan. So uh, our poor community, they hear a few sort of phrases from me over and over again. One of them is, we do not simply do things to make a better Ohio Wesleyan. We leverage Ohio Wesleyan to make a better world.
Ah, magic. So good. So
To
good. I
to be
mean,
able to
for any leader, just take that statement, replace Ohio Wesleyan, right? And insert your own organization and put it on repeat. Put it on repeat. Fill in the blank with your organization.
it's
Because you end up
it's
accomplishing both, right? You don't sacrifice anything with that kind of sentiment. You end up building both.
and it's a powerful example of the thing that we said at the outset of our conversation, which is that doing the right thing often produces a better result.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. Well, I'm glad we were able to cover both sides of that coin in terms of shared vision and then elevating sites. I know when you've accomplished both, it creates uh, an inertia that is very strong, and that kind of leads into our last um, concept that I wanted to explore with you, and it's all about momentum. and building it, sustaining it, growing it, whatever it needs to be done. Tell me a little bit about how and why building momentum for you is an important concept.
I think that, and these are all three really interconnected concepts.
Okay.
I think that enthusiasm and winning are contagious. I think that when you are able to get a win, when you're able to collect low-hanging fruit, it helps people to understand that you are heading in the right direction. It is a validation of that hard work that you did to achieve a shared vision, and it gives you permission, it gives you affirmation that it's okay to have elevated sights. I think of the show Ted Lasso. So for any of the listeners who ever watched the show Ted Lasso, I continue to encourage people to touch the proverbial belief sign. In fact, somebody actually got me a coffee mug here for anyone who's just
That's
listening
great.
on audio. I'm holding up a believe sign mug. It really is about that validation. And then, for donors, being able to see that good things are happening or that significant gifts are arriving is a signal that your organization is investment grade. That's why big
Ah,
gifts tend to attract each other. And, just a couple of examples to try and bring this all together, all three of these concepts really. The first example would be my inauguration. So, inaugurations are kind of these boring, stodgy affairs that happen in higher education. And I didn't want it to be an event that was a celebration of a dude getting a job. That was not what I thought we should try to accomplish there. Instead, what we really tried to accomplish was to make some big, bold claims about who we are and what we seek to be, and then to back them up with blow your hair back proof points in the form of significant gifts, bold partnerships, innovative concepts. We actually ended up making 9 different announcements at the inauguration. So it wasn't an inauguration, it was a press conference.
right.
And the message was Ohio Wesleyan has arrived, and keep an eye on us. Look out, because even bigger things are going to happen. And here are all the proof points that show that we are heading in that direction. And so we were in one fell swoop, where for anyone who hadn't bought into the vision, we were evangelizing this vision. We were elevating everyone's sights by saying, look at what we've already achieved, 9 months in.
Right, right.
And it was a momentum building effort. And what was really kind of cool was that the inauguration ended up, we didn't necessarily plan it for this reason on this day, but it was April 19th. And April 19th is the day that the American Revolution began. It was the day that Paul Revere did the Midnight Ride. It was the start of the battles of Lexington and Concord. It was the shot heard around the world. It was the day that we had enough and said we're starting our own country. And I just thought, how perfect. This is our opportunity to rebel against everything that's broken in higher education, to rebel against incremental thinking, to rebel against our protectionist instincts vis-a-vis the ivory tower. And it is our chance to rebel for boldness, kindness, and innovation. And then a year later, so this was April 25th, or I'm sorry, not April 25th. Yeah, no, it was April 25th. So April 19th was the inauguration. April 25th of this year was another inflection point and another opportunity to continue the drumbeat of success. So I had to end up closing the library on my third day on the job at Ohio Wesleyan. And that was a really painful thing to have to do. And I, had good counsel that that was the right the right decision. But in a year's time, we planned a bold, one-of-a-kind concept for the future library. And on April 25th, we announced that that was a $45 million project. And we announced the largest gift in our history. We announced 4 8-figure gifts. And we announced that that $45 million project was fully funded in one fell swoop.
Oh, wow. So cool.
And we invoked the same rhetoric, the same logic as we did in the inauguration. So it was just the next chapter in the story. And again, all the people that helped make that happen, they were the champions, they were the heroes that were making a better world through Ohio Wesleyan University.
Yeah, right, right. And in that story, what I hear is that you um, created a shared vision, you raised sights, and you captured some incredible momentum as you sip your coffee out of your Believe cup. You gotta
Preach, my
believe.
brother.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think um, everyone who hears this is going to want to go back to college and um, go to Ohio Wesleyan University or want to send their kids to be students at Ohio Wesleyan because who wouldn't want to be a part of what you're building there and what you have built and continue to build? So I just wanted to thank you
Thank you.
for sharing your expertise and wisdom with me, with the podcast, with the group. So much here to unpack, and I know it's going to positively impact so many leaders today and in the future who have the opportunity to hear this podcast, but also have the experience to hear from you and work with you going forward. And I know it would be great for the audience to keep going and going and going, but we do have to call it a day and just say that what Matt has said brings us to the end of our podcast. And we just wanted to thank the audience for joining us and being a part of this. Please subscribe to this podcast and also to Mastering Fundraising, our other podcast, both focus on conversations with the most accomplished and successful nonprofit leaders in the sector. And hopefully there's a lot of learning that comes along with that. But until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you all to do what you can for this world by leading for good. Thanks all.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.